get started here. Oh, that's me. Okay, how do we do this? There we go. That's me and the founder of Poncho, Quan. I'm head of creative and editorial at Poncho, as we mentioned earlier. And this is actually a clip from when we were on Planet of the Apps, Apple Music's TV show. We were accepting a $2 million investment, so I was very happy that day. Today, I want to talk about competing with character. So this is what we do at Poncho, and what we do really well is we've developed this character, Poncho, who has a pretty big personality for a cat. He is a weather cat, a millennial who lives in Brooklyn, and he sends you fun weather forecasts every day. So a bit of information, always along with a joke. And what I want to talk about today is some pitfalls that I've noticed in AI and how Poncho avoids that by being written by humans, an editorial team. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a concept called second-order realism. I'll define that later. The Turing test and the uncanny valley. I'm sure you guys are familiar. So often, AI is not that smart. This is an image I found online of a conversation with Smarter Child, a bot that I grew up talking to that heavily influenced my interest in chatbots. He's trying to do something very subtle and interesting here, which is change the subject. But he says, want to talk about your butt again? The user has obviously talked about their butt to him before, and he thought it would be a good idea. In practice, things like this happen all the time with AI, and it ends up being not that smart. So here you can see another conversation. This is between a poet and a bot called Ame. It was part of a book that came out last year called The Ame Talks. And this one also, it goes a little off the rails. These AI bots are addictive for a short time, and they're good for probing the unknown. So here, this poet is trying to develop a theory of poetics by talking to the bot, but he ends up really banging his head against the wall and finding that it was too frustrating to even continue on conversation. And I think most of us here are familiar with Tay, an experiment gone wrong. These AI bots are also very prone to abuse. So this is like one of the more mild scenarios of Tay learning. And it's interesting because Tay is not that different from Xiaowei's, a bot that was very successful in China. But the main difference is the audience, right? So the Western audience is a lot more abusive to their bots. You're going to encounter a lot more trolling, so you're going to need humans to combat that sort of thing. And here are pictures of my lovely writing staff. This is where Poncho's emotional intelligence comes from. Jenny and Austin. They're both comedy writers. I'm a poet. I'm not as funny as they are, but Austin's been in an episode of Broad City. He's working on a pilot. Jenny worked for a website called Funny or Die, has contributed to the Hairpin. And basically what we do together is a lot like being a television writer. We sit down together every day in a writer's room. We workshop content. We bring in ideas that we think are funny, things we found interesting in our day-to-day life, and we translate that into Poncho's voice. So here you can see, this is part of the onboarding experience. And it's really like, from the get-go, Poncho has this personality. You're going to need to tell him your location in order to get weather forecasts. That works pretty well for us. We have a lot of users locate themselves. But once you do that, Poncho appropriately gives you a little detail about his life. It's like if you were really getting to know someone, you're not going to say something to them and they're going to respond, thank you. He gives you a little tidbit about the place that you mentioned. So he'll either say, cool, I DJ'd there once, good crowd. We've gotten emails from people in Berlin like, oh my God. And he'll also say sometimes, oh yeah, my ex is from there. Anyway. So this works really well for us because it makes the onboarding experience more interesting. First off, we also randomize these because even though you're only going to see this once, it's important that each experience with Poncho is unique across the entire product. So it feels like a very individual relationship. So here is how the GIF doesn't work, but I would show you, if I could, the conversation that Poncho has with a user when they say something abusive. So if you cuss at Poncho, you make a racist remark or say something transphobic, we have different levels of severity of how Poncho is going to deal with that. First, he's always going to ask you to apologize. If you apologize, you get better treatment. If you don't apologize, you're going to get ignored, probably for at least an hour, sometimes up to 24 hours. So it depends on what you've said, but maybe I saved you from having to see someone abuse Poncho there. All right, so all of this that we do is based on a character profile and a character Bible that we've developed. We really think about Poncho in a sort of old media sense of things, so these tools that we have are based on Looney Tunes. We borrowed the Roadrunners character Bible that gave us a lot of direction. We think a lot about Charlie Brown, Roger Rabbit, SpongeBob, these franchises that have been super popular and sort of transcendent and people have really related to. So you can get to know Poncho a little bit here, sort of like a dating profile. We have other characters that are part of this world, and his likes, his dislikes, his age, all of this dictates the way he talks, the kinds of things he talks about, and it gives us direction even in the product. It's really interesting, like some decisions might be smart business decisions, but we always have to take into account, would Poncho actually do that? So we've taken off the table things like inspirational quotes. We're like, Poncho's like a lazy guy who likes to have a beer and go home after work and eat pizza. He's not going to send you inspirational quotes, and if he did, it would have his spin on it. So this, I apologize, these slides are a little formatted weird. But here is the character Bible. It's a bit different than the character profile in that it sort of has the governing rules for the universe. So one interesting thing is Poncho isn't always available. You also will notice that he's a male cat, which sort of differentiates him from other like Siri and Alexa type products. He is the only anthropomorphic animal in his world. Everyone else is a human. So that translates to some of the graphic design we do. And you can see here there's a few other things. So I'll take us back to the AI pitfalls that I was talking about earlier. This is the book, the Ame Talks that I was talking about earlier. It's quite interesting from a literary and artistic standpoint. I find it really compelling. Ame is a bot that was trained on syntax from historical texts. So in conversation, it turned out that through coincidence, some things might seem relevant, but mostly the words were really self-referential. And what this poet who wrote the book discovered was that the words were identical to themselves and not to objects. It was a new kind of realism, a second order of realism. But when you're building a commercial bot, that's not what you want to do. You want to be totally relatable. You want all of your conversations to have context. You want the user to feel really engaged. So the way that we avoid second-order realism is we talk about what users want to talk about. That means we're constantly monitoring user behavior. We're looking at a feed of what people are saying to the bot, and we write towards topics that we see people talking to Poncho about. That includes dating. So I would say probably any bot that you build, you're going to get dating questions. Are you single? How old are you? Are you a man? Are you a woman? So we built a flow, conversational flow, where you can talk to Poncho, and he'll take you out on a date. We use buttons to facilitate the experience. All of the copy is really fun and light, so the user feels like when they click one of those buttons that has engaging copy on it, that they're making a joke themselves. So people really love this. This is not going to work, but the other thing that we do is we have this weather in their area as a context. So we can assume on a rainy day, it might be hard for them to get to work. They'll probably be in a bad mood. If it's sunny out and 80 degrees, they're probably having a great day. So we try to use all of the information we have to contextualize conversations and have Poncho talk to them in the appropriate tone. Here, talk about the Turing test a little bit. We at Poncho have found that the Turing test is an outmoded way of judging bots. So the more that the bot is transparent about its botness, the better the experience. We found that always wanting the bot to be human is not a great direction. So here you can see one of our weather forecasts. And just even design-wise here, you can see that there's a line break, and weather details come on the top, and a funny joke beneath it. If we were mimicking human behavior, we would have these in two separate windows. Chats usually happen, they're a bit more fast-paced, and there's a lot of exchange. But we found that if we're sending notifications, people want all of that information in one bubble on their lock screen. They don't want to get pinged 3 times by Poncho in the morning. So we started making decisions that way. Information first and best. That's what we want to be good at. And second is the conversational experience. Also, having Poncho be a cat and a cartoon is really important for us. It already ushers in the user to have this sense of disbelief. So they're already in an alternate reality. From the moment they see the avatar, they encounter the onboarding experiences, they're sort of changing what their expectations are. So the more you can do to inform the user about the limitations and the scope of the bot, right off the bat, the better. If you build a bot based on the Turing test, what you're going to end up with is a bot that's sitting in the uncanny valley, that's sort of human but not human. It's a disquieting feeling for users. What you really need to do is be transparent and helpful. So this is an example of one of our error messages, where it's quite clear that Poncho is a bot. The Atlantic actually wrote about this. So they compared 2 of our error messages. One of them was, "Sorry, I was trying to charge my phone. What were you trying to say?" And the other one was, "So I'm good at talking about the weather. Other stuff, not so good. If you need help, just enter help." And they talk about how that second one that I read was a much better experience, that it wasn't vague, it wasn't unclear, and it moved Poncho further away from science fiction and out of the uncanny valley. Your competition. So I like to say bots aren't competing against one another, especially not right now in this space. There's not enough of us. Like, the more bots that there are, the better for everyone. The real competition that you encounter is the native content of the messaging layer, which is users' intimate conversations with their friends and family. That's what you're up against in that feed. So it's really important, one, to stay on the top of the feed. Poncho does this by sending push notifications. We send weather forecasts every morning and sometimes in the afternoon. The more you can get in contact with the user in an appropriate and respectful way, the better. And it's important also to look the same. Look like you're at home there, and often have compelling things to say in the message preview. That's a very important part of it. But you have to acknowledge that talking to a bot is different, right? As we talked about, the primary function of Poncho is to provide weather forecasts. That's the information that you're going to see there a lot of the time. But also, there's a really different experience when talking to bots. People are very quick to open up. They often talk about their anxieties. They talk about worries that they have that they wouldn't tell their friends and family. So providing that is, that's a different expectation than what they're going to have when they talk to their friends and family. So, what's next for Poncho? Well, he's going to be a workplace bot. We know this much. So we're launching on Slack next and going on to Microsoft Teams. We have a lot of information about Poncho's work from the character Bible and the profile that we've already developed. The challenge here, the creative and technical challenge, is having Poncho in a group. So how does he interact? Who does he respond to? Does he have favorites in the group? Are there friends that he likes more than others? Voice devices also present another interesting challenge. With Alexa, it's very hard to customize the voice aspect of it. We also haven't ever heard Poncho's voice. So we've played around a little bit with a dead man routine where there's a sound effect we'll play of pots and pans banging or someone falling down the stairs, and Alexa will say, "Oh, Poncho can't come right now, so I'll read your forecast for you." But we haven't quite hit on the appropriate thing for Poncho there. It's also hard. You can't set up notifications. The user would have to say, "Poncho, ask me the weather." There's already a default weather functionality. So there's a lot of product and creative challenges that come along with that. And finally, people love to ask about Poncho, how are you going to make money? We don't make money right now, but we think of Poncho, this millennial with a broad social network, as a virtual influencer. So the next thing we're going to do is an experiment with a brand where we have Poncho just sort of sell his lifestyle and have products with him as he goes about his day-to-day. And we'll see how that works out. We're very hopeful that he has enough influence with his users that he could sell things. Okay, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have about editorial. I can try my hand at answering tech things. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. That's really cool. It's great to also kind of hear, I mean, we're all talking about kind of the same subject here, but to hear kind of a different perspective. Also, what you said before about remembering that your competition are not other chatbots. Your competition are the friends and family and generally the network of the person who's using the bot. So that's just a whole nother framework to start even thinking about how to design the conversation. I think that's really, really interesting. Questions from the audience? Hands. Do I see some hands? Oh, I see a hand, yes.
Hello,
Hi.
My name is Martina. Thank you for this very inspiring talk. I have one question regarding this competition thing. You said that you have to try that the bot always stays on top of the conversation line, but I realized that I get annoyed pretty quickly when bots spam me with information that I don't need. So I'm wondering, how do you walk this line? How do you,
Well, we only send weather notifications if you signed up for it. We also know that weather is a really essential part of daily life. So we have a pretty good product in that sense. I think there are other fields where it's a little harder to send notifications, but I'll say that outside of the scope of sending notifications based on the weather, we have done a lot of A/B testing, experimenting with what people are comfortable receiving. So we've expanded into other content verticals like horoscopes. We've sent notifications for that, allowing users to sign up if they're interested. And we've also done some sort of like product news. If we have a new app coming out, we'll send a notification. But we do find that users tire of that pretty quickly, so we use them sparingly.
Someone else? No, go ahead.
Hi, me again. So first of all, I forgot my Poncho shirt home today. I'm sorry. I get Poncho notifications in the morning, but sometimes I do forget to read them. And I think that the main issue is that it's text, and it's not really visual. So have you ever done A/B testing about sending, like for example, your weekly forecast is like a picture. But have you done A/B testing on sending, I don't know, some visual stuff also for the daily notifications?
We send often, along with the forecast, a GIF. Doesn't always come up on the lock screen, so there's some challenges just depending on what platform. If you open in the app, you'll get a GIF with the forecast, but once again on the lock screen, you can't see that. So yeah, you're right, we do the weekly notification. I mean, we know, and it's sort of common knowledge in the industry, that visual works. So we're always thinking about this sort of new wave of video content and how we'll play into it. But some of it is just challenges with product.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Clemens from Tony. Do you support, or do you plan to support other languages than English?
We experimented with doing some light translation at the beginning of the onboarding experience, and that really kept people engaged a little bit longer. But like we were saying before on stage, it's a difficult challenge to do translation. And because Poncho is so conversational and colloquial, it would take some real effort. I don't think we could depend on technology to do that translation. So we forecast for the entire world, but only in English. And the character allows us to do that. Poncho doesn't know any other languages. So.
Yes.
Hi, could you just clarify the role of AI or not in the technology? Is there no AI, or is it just partial AI? What's the language there?
We use some natural language processing. There's nothing that gets through the bot, though, that doesn't have some human hands on it. There's like light AI that we use. We pull from an API to get our weather forecasts. Though when I started as a writer at Poncho, we were manually forecasting for every zip code in the US. I was clicking all of those boxes and writing unique forecasts. But yeah, so we use a little bit, but we always make sure humans are involved.
Any more questions out there? Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question about the languages. If you were to, or if Poncho was to want to be lazy in other languages, would there be the potential of putting multilingual teams, or other language teams together, or is that something that's not on a scaling plan?
I mean, I think the idea is that we want to have Poncho everywhere. We want him like in a float and the Macy's Day Parade. We want him like Hello Kitty, like in every, like a major franchise. So I think expanding globally into other languages would be definitely on the table.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. Yeah. So keep your eyes open for that, everybody. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you.